Hello and welcome to today's lesson of 3D drawing for your model railway. Today's lesson I'm going to look at drawing the pivot points where the jib rests on our cradle here. Before we do that, what thing I need to highlight is obviously where we made if I turn the body and the chassis off, where we made the runner's wagon wider so that we'd be able to fit an axle in here, that the side effect of that is obviously it made the cradle wider. Now as you can see with the cradle, if we were to just put the points coming out the side of the jib here that rests in the cradle, you can see they're going to be miles and miles away. So like most things with modelling, we're going to have to make a little compromise, and I think that compromise is going to be moving this cradle inbound and making it more narrow. So that might take a little bit of work through our history, but hopefully it won't be too difficult to fix that. Okay, so if we just select the runner to work on, so we've just got the history for the runner. We're going to have to look at pre-mirroring everything over. So let's try and find the correct points. For the history back here. So the jib's disappeared because within the history, the jib wouldn't have been drawn at this point. Right, so there we go, got this mirrored over. So if we look at this extrusion we did here, I believe it's that one. Yeah. So what we did is we extruded these profiles as well. So if we just change that to just be the bottom profile, and then we skip forwards in our history, we've now got this sitting wide. That mirror might need changed, so if we just edit the mirror object, we only need to mirror that bottom bit over. It hasn't mirrored the top over, which is fine. Let's actually change that. We'll catch the objects that one as well. That and won't do it. Okay, not an issue. So we'll go pre-mirror, and then we're going to split this off, which means that we're going to have an extra body created, but we'll have to join this one, maybe the top half of the buffers on again. So if we use our splitting tool, body to split is the bottom one, and then the splitting tool is going to be this top surface here. You can see it's going to cut everything above and below into parts. Okay, so then we're going to have the main chassis, and then we're going to have to create a combine to add in the extra bits. But if we turn off everything, we're not going to combine first. So we don't want the W irons. We don't need that top cradle. We do need to add that. No, don't we? No, we don't need to add that. We don't need that part. And it's all these main chassis parts that we need, except for that one, which is the cradle. So we can combine everything that we've left open. So that's the main chassis, we're keeping that as the target body. And then we're going to select main chassis 1, 2, 3, and 5. These are essentially the hopper, the eyelet, and the top part of the buffers. And that now joins them back all on together. And if we jump forwards in this history here. So profile, what it's looking to try and mirror across now is the cradle and main chassis 4, which is this part here. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to copy that over. We're just going to select that bottom object, So I can copy everything over, and it's just going to leave these two here sat independent. Now if we skip all this forward to the end of the history, make sure there's no errors that flag up, which it has. So we're going to have to look at these and what they are. Which is a lot. Let's go about this a different way then. So if we undo what we've just done, and we'll just go back to where we were at the beginning of the lesson. Okay, let's turn the jib off. Okay, so this is at the end of the history. So because that's causing too many issues to try and fix it going back through the history, we'll go a different way, which means it will have more combines at this point, but we won't have those errors that we're getting thrown up. So if we turn off all of that lot, so we're left with the cradle. We don't even need the cradle. We'll split the body, capture current position. Not sure why that's doing that. So the body we're going to split will be the chassis. Splitting tool will be the top surface. So we're now going to have all these extra bits that we need to then look at. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to turn off the ones we're not initially going to combine. So I'm going to keep that toolbox off. That toolbox. And keep that separate. So all this lot we're going to combine. So if we combine main chassis as a target body, and then tool bodies will be everything else that's left here. Okay, so if we now look at this part here, how are we going to fix this? Well, let's get rid of that hole in it to start with. In fact, the hole's on the upper cradle, isn't it? So if we find that hole that we drew, roll the history back, that's going to be the easiest way to see it. So it's not there. It's this one here. So if we roll the history here, I'm just going to delete that extrusion. I'm going to leave the sketch there for the moment. Jump back to the end of the history, making sure there's no more errors. There's not. Okay, so now if I turn the main chassis off, I'm going to keep the cradle on. I'm going to keep the main chassis number 10 on. Okay, what we're then going to do is find the midpoint between the two sides. So let's just create a new plane on the mid plane here. I'm going to go between that face and that face. Click on OK. And then I'm going to split this body. So it's going to be the cradle and the lower main chassis using the splitting tool of that main plane that we just created there. Click on OK. So now we've got 4 parts essentially. Okay. If I turn off cradle and main chassis too, I'm then only working with half of it. I can turn off that construction plane so that we're not looking at that. Wait a minute, we can have the radio button checked. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is just go back through this lot, unfortunately. I do apologise about this. Okay, so back to where we were. Select the runner. Let's turn off the main, we need the main chassis off at the moment. Okay, so we're going to split the chassis again. And we're going to use the splitting tool as that top surface. Click on OK. Catch up. Okay, going back to what we were doing before. Turn off all the parts that we're not looking to combine. And then we'll combine what's left. So main chassis is a target, tool body being everything else that's left here. Okay, so let's now look at just the cradle here. Get that circle turned off. Just run through the history again to try and find that circle. Just press that feature for the moment and jump to the end. Okay, so now what we can do is go back to creating that mid-plane, use that face and that face to have that mid-plane created, and then split those two bodies by that mid-plane. Okay, if we turn off those two, okay, what we then need to do is make this narrower. So if we have this jib back in place, we're going to want to see what the distance is between these two surfaces here. If we inspect that surface to that one, it's not telling us the angle we want. Try that again, a different way then. So go that point to that surface. Okay, so we've got 2 millimeters apparently. So I'm going to want to close that in by about probably 1.3 maybe. That will give us a 0.7 gap on each side. So we'll go back to these two surfaces in here and then cut these away by that 1.3 that we just said. So if we then mirror these two across, we could actually go turn that back on, do the same here, extrude those by the 1.3. Okay, now we can turn them back on. That one, cradle there. Okay, turn the jib off so we can see what we're looking at. So we've now got these with a gap of 2.6 in the middle. So we need to move these both inbound. So if we take these two parts here, right click, move, and then we can bring it in 1.3. And if we take these two parts, select them all, control to do this, a cradle and that part there, right click and repeat move, copy, move these inbound 1.3. Okay, and then we can combine that and that as our, combine, make sure you use control, that and that as our target body. That one and that one combined, because we need to keep this top half separately. To catch up. So that's now all one part. We do the same, select that main chassis and that main chassis and combine. They're now one part. Okay, let's have the runner turn back on so we'll get the main chassis here. So now you can see that we've got these two faces need to come in. So we can extrude that to that inner surface. Click on OK, and that will combine this part in with it. And then extrude that to that surface. Click on OK. That's now combined those as one. We've now got these two toolboxes. I'm just going to shuffle these in slightly. So move, copy that. So we added 1.3 millimeters on that side. Maybe 1.3 on that side. And then we can combine main chassis and these main chassis with these two. Click on OK. Okay, so now we should be, if we check both sides, everything looks okay. The runner should be back to where it was. We put the jib back on, we can see that's now sitting much closer between the two parts of the frame here. So the last thing we need to do now on this lesson is I said about creating the little lifting lugs that this jib sits on. There's a couple of pins that come out here. So if we just spin this round, and then we're going to be working on the jib, so make sure that radio button's selected. How we're going to do this, we're going to go back before the mirror, so that's there, check that, yep, and then we're going to create a sketch on that front surface, using a circle, and I'm going to put a circle in this position. I want it to actually be slightly larger. I'm going to go 1.2 millimeters because I want a little bit of strength. Now I know that is sitting below the runner here on the cradle, but it's going to lift the arm up ever so slightly as one, just to give me a little bit more clearance here when it's running. I'm going to go, as I say, I'm going to go for about 1.2 millimeters. Give me that strength that I'm after. I'm going to define its position relative to this and its height position. Nope, it's not going to do that one. I'll have to find a different point to go to. So turn the runner off because we don't want it doing anything silly like combining. And then we can extrude this outwards. I'm going to go for about 1.5 millimeters initially. Join. If you have a look at the runner, that's now sitting quite comfortably out beyond there. Maybe that's a little bit too far. Let's edit that. Let's take it in. Maybe 1.1, just so it's a little bit longer. And jump the history all the way to the end, so that mirrors across. Do the history on here, jump back to the end, and that in. Because the history, essentially what happened, if I show you what I did there, undo that. If you're just editing something in the crane jib, like we've just done there, and you finish that, go all the way to the end of that history, having gone back through the history, what it then hasn't done is it hasn't then jumped to the end of the history for the runner. So if we then go to the top level, jump all the way across to the end of that history, you can then see it's fixed that. Okay, so that's now sitting in there. I'm debating whether I want to make these pins a little bit longer, because although that's sitting on this side, the offset of the runner to the jib at the moment is slightly out, so it will come in a little bit. So I think I probably do want to make that just a little bit wider on that pin. So find that pin, that one there. And yeah, I probably do want to go to that 1.3, 1.4 millimeters. Give it that a little bit more length to make sure it does sit in that position correctly. Okay, so yeah, that shows you how we had to go about doing a change to get the pins in here, and the compromises we have to make, unfortunately, when we're looking at models with things like axle widths, and have to make things slightly wider than they would be on the scale. But that will sit in there much better. As I said, we've designed this as two parts, so we can have a pin sitting through here with a small washer between them so they can spin independently. And then as it goes around corners, this will be able to turn with the rest of the body smoothly and still sit in the jib runner. So I hope you've enjoyed looking at that, and you can see, you know, everyone makes mistakes by forgetting about this radio button. I always prefer to go back in it, especially if I haven't gone too far, go back through the history, just change it back to where it should be, and then fix it from that point onwards. It's a much cleaner way to have the CAD there. So yeah, if you've enjoyed it, please press the like button and please subscribe for future videos.